September 15th, 1940. Imagine the architect of the greatest naval surprise attack in history, a man who planned Pearl Harbor, a man who the entire Japanese nation relied on for victory, secretly convinced that his own country would be utterly and completely defeated. He wasn't speculating. He had lived in the enemy's heartland. He had calculated their capacity for war down to the last barrel of oil and every single rivet. And he warned his leaders repeatedly, "If I am told to fight, regardless of consequences, I shall run wild for the first 6 months or a year, but I have utterly no confidence for the second or third year." His colleagues called him Americanized. They dismissed his math. They ignored his prophecy. This is the story of Admiral Yamamoto, the brilliant strategist who planned the victory that doomed his nation, and the tragic reason why he knew from the very beginning that Japan could never win a war against the industrial giant he knew as America. The date was September 15th, 1940. In the Prime Minister's official residence in Tokyo, the air was thick with the scent of smoke as Admiral Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, extinguished his third American Lucky Strike cigarette. Prime Minister Prince Fumimaro Konoye cut through the diplomatic pleasantries and asked directly, "If we go to war with America, what are our chances?" Yamamoto's reply would haunt the Japanese Empire until its collapse. It was a prediction of utter defeat, delivered before the first shot was even fired. He was not merely guessing. The mathematics of destruction had been precisely calculated years earlier in the lecture halls of Harvard, confirmed in the steel mills of Pennsylvania, and verified in the endless oil fields of Texas. Yamamoto knew a truth his colleagues refused to accept. Japan had already lost any prolonged war with America before it even began. The only variable was time. He would grant them 6 months of initial victories before the industrial colossus fully awoke. Born in 1884 as Isoroku Takano, the future admiral grew up in crushing poverty. This early hardship would later make the sheer abundance he observed in America all the more striking. He had already lost 2 fingers on his left hand at the 1905 Battle of Tsushima, a stunning Japanese victory over Russia that had instilled in many of his peers dangerous delusion that spiritual superiority could overcome material disadvantage. Yamamoto understood that the victory of Tsushima was possible only because Russia was fighting across vast distances while facing a revolution at home. America would present no such weakness. To truly grasp the difference, Yamamoto needed direct experience, and in 1919, he received orders that would change the course of history. Report to Harvard University for Language Studies and Naval Observation. In April 1919, Yamamoto arrived at Harvard. While officially enrolled as a special student to study English, earning a mediocre C+ in the subject, the real education was taking place outside the classroom. Living in modest quarters in Brookline, Massachusetts, Yamamoto established an obsessive routine. He slept only 3 to 4 hours a night, spending the rest of his time poring over technical journals, maps of oil fields, and statistical abstracts concerning American industry and petroleum production. He quickly discovered that America produced 65% of the world's oil, 378 million barrels in 1919 alone, while Japan had to import nearly every drop, mostly from America itself. The critical insights, however, came during Harvard's summer breaks. Yamamoto would disappear for weeks, hitchhiking across America with only a few dollars, surviving on bread, bananas, and water, all to save money for further observation. In the summer of 1920, he stood outside the Ford Highland Park plant in Detroit. He watched 20,000 workers stream out, most heading to private automobiles, a scene utterly impossible in Japan. Inside the plant, which he toured by posing as a visiting engineering student, he witnessed the assembly line that built a Model T every 45 seconds. The process, from raw steel to finished car, took just 93 minutes. Yamamoto calculated that the Ford company alone employed more industrial workers than the entire Japanese Navy, and its daily steel consumption exceeded Japan's weekly production. He wrote to his mentor, Admiral Thomas Aburo Hano, that the Americans had turned manufacturing into a science. producing machines systematically, efficiently, and in quantities that defied imagination. He recognized that those Model T assembly lines could just as easily produce military trucks, tanks, and aircraft engines, with skilled workers ready to build weapons and vast supply chains ready to deliver ammunition to battlefields. Yamamoto's most revealing, unauthorized journey took him to the oil fields of East Texas in the summer of 1921. He reached the Spindletop field, where the modern oil industry was born, and spent days talking to engineers and roughnecks. He noted that single wells produced more oil in a day than Japan imported in a week. The scale defied Japanese comprehension. At the Texaco refinery in Port Arthur, which processed 100,000 barrels daily, he sketched the massive 24-hour operation. "Oil is the blood of modern warfare," Yamamoto wrote in his journal. "Ships, planes, tanks, trucks all drink oil. America has oceans of it beneath their soil. Japan has none. This single fact determines everything." Traveling north, he witnessed the boom where oil derricks sprouted like steel forests, and natural gas, considered mere waste, was burned off in flares that lit the night sky for miles around. This casual abundance, the ability to waste enough natural gas daily to power Tokyo for a month, convinced him more than any military demonstration of America's invincibility. In 1926, Yamamoto returned to America as Japan's naval attaché in Washington. His diplomatic status allowed him to officially confirm the industrial explosion that had occurred in his 5-year absence. Automobile production was accelerating toward 4.3 million vehicles. Steel production had hit 48 million tons, and oil production now exceeded 770 million barrels. He established a routine of systematic observation, working at the embassy 3 days a week and spending the remaining 4 traveling to factories and resource centers. He observed the Bethlehem steel plant in Pennsylvania, where electric furnaces produce specialized naval steel in hours, a process that took Japanese foundries weeks. The plant employed 30,000 workers and had its own massive power plant. The scale was overwhelming. Assembly lines stretched for miles, and the parking lots held 25,000 cars, more automobiles than existed in most Japanese cities. He noted the revolutionary catalytic cracking towers at Standard Oil's Bayway refinery in New Jersey, which could extract twice as much gasoline from crude oil as Japanese facilities. The equation of modern war, he concluded, had been solved. Unlimited raw materials, plus unlimited production capacity, plus unlimited innovation equals inevitable victory. Japan has none of these advantages. Returning to Japan in 1928, Yamamoto submitted a 200-page report on American capabilities that should have ended any thought of war. His conclusions were stark. American manufacturing exceeded Japan's by a factor of 10 to 20 in every critical category. Oil production was 100 times Japan's consumption, and steel production was 12 times greater. The report was classified, filed, and largely ignored. Yamamoto found himself isolated. His American experience was not valued, but made him suspect. He was too Americanized, critics whispered. Yet Yamamoto continued his warnings, hammering home the same message in lectures and articles. Japan could not defeat America in a prolonged war. By 1939, his opposition to war made him a target for assassination by ultra-nationalist army officers. To save his life, he was transferred to sea duty as commander-in-chief of the combined fleet. The man most opposed to the war was given command of the force that would have to fight it. It is like being asked to perform surgery on a patient who insists on committing suicide, he wrote to a friend. I can perhaps delay the agony, but I cannot prevent the death. The supreme irony of his career came in 1941, when he was tasked with planning the Pearl Harbor attack. His solution was based entirely on his American experience. He knew America's weakness was psychological, not material, and their strength bred complacency. A devastating first strike might shock them into negotiation before their economic strength could fully mobilize. But even as he planned the tactical success, he knew the attack would fail strategically. The failure would come in the aftermath, when America's manufacturing power turned to war production. He had observed the factories that would produce the weapons,
calculated the oil that would fuel the counterattack, and experienced the mass production techniques that would build entire fleets. He had done the math, witnessed the factors, and calculated the outcome. Japan would have 6 months to run wild, then face inevitable defeat from an aroused industrial giant. He was right to the day. The man who spent years in America warning Japan would lose became history's most tragic prophet, condemned to lead a war he knew was lost before the first shot was fired, and tragically killed by the very American technology he had warned would prove decisive. Admiral Yamamoto was vindicated only in the ashes of his nation's defeat. His American education taught him the most bitter lesson of all, that in modern industrial warfare, mathematics is destiny.